Hello and welcome back to Exchanges, the Alex Martin podcast. We are about to learn about one of the most intriguing and exciting business models I've come across in recent years. Joined alongside us this evening is you, Spot Property.
Thank you.
Introduce yourselves, fellas.
My name is Ben Radstone. I'm the co-owner of You Spot Property. Run the business we've launched for over, I think, 11 years now. And we are brilliant at buying empty and derelict property across the country. We can find anyone, and we buy a lot of buildings, more than anyone in the country, in our view.
My name's Henry Taylor. I've been with the business for 5 years, and I'm in charge of buying the properties that people spot and converting them into opportunities.
So were you solo for 6 years?
No, so my business partner's Nick Calms.
Okay.
So Nick and I launched in 2000 and I think it was 2013 or 14. I can't remember. I think it was 2014. And the idea, what actually happened was, when Mick and I joined up together, we were always good at finding the owners of property. Like, we used to go for buildings by agents and whatever else. But then we were just quite good at finding the owners of properties ourselves. And then I remember once we bought a building in North London, and the neighbouring building was derelict, completely derelict. And by hook or by crook, Nick and I found the number of the owner, and we bought the building from him. And he goes, you cannot believe how many thousands of letters I've had over the years about this building, but you're the only people to ever have called us up about it. And on that basis, I'm happy to do a deal with you. And then it was actually Nick, in fairness, started looking at there was an old website called, I think it was Up My Street. Do you remember that website, guys? And I remember that, where like if there was potholes on your street, you'd report it. It was something to fix my street, up your street, or something like that.
Wouldn't that be a council thing?
Exactly, correct. So people used to report it to the council, right? And for them to go and fix it. So the idea came with one of the web companies we were working with, as to how can we speed build a database of empty and derelict property. Initially, it was London and M25 focused, and then it's just grown, and we go nationwide.
Are you taking the credit for that idea, or is that Nick?
It's both of us. It takes a long time to build a successful business. Rome is not built in the day. And one of the biggest mistakes that Nick and I made from the outset is that we were very rash in our decisions, and we learned as we've grown our business just to calm and be pragmatic in our approach. And that's when people ask me about like the advice I give. So don't be too brash to make decisions. Things are difficult. And certainly in what we do, there's absolutely no right answer to any of it. So it ends up in all sorts of, before we came here today, myself, Nick, and Henry, and a colleague of ours, Ben, we're like I'll say a three-way, but that doesn't sound right. But we were in a.
Yeah, I was saying out.
It is. Yeah.
But we were in a conversation for about an hour and a half about whether we should or whether we shouldn't buy this building. Because there's no fine art to it in terms of there's no correct answer. Because everyone has their own buying model, everyone has a different way of approaching certain things, and that's I think what makes the industry unique. Why someone wants to buy a house, you don't always know. You don't always know whether they're going to be living there, whether they have family they want to move there. You see a lot of different things around the country. That is one thing you see for sure. Different areas of the country have a different way of sort of behaving in terms of how quickly they perform.
Because if you're looking at property, I know it's probably obvious to most, but you would think that the same sort of numbers and rules apply if you're looking at a house that's worth 300 grand in one area and it needs £60,000 spending on it, and you're looking at a house in another area that's also 300 grand but needs £60,000 spending on it. Someone might pay £280,000 for it unmodernised, and the other one they won't pay more than £200,000 for. And so it's not. Sometimes you just need to know the areas, and it's like
correct.
It's not it's definitely not a science. If you were just applying numbers, you'd lose money.
Correct.
More often than not.
Correct.
So either of you can pick this up. Can you explain to me what You Spot Property is? Like I'm a baby.
Sure. So it was a platform set up for the public like a web platform, a website for the public to report to us empty or derelict property. So, for example, if you're walking on the street and you see a house, which we all can determine a house which looks like it's in need of modernisation. We've all got eyes. We all roughly know. You report that to our website. There's a set criteria. of properties that we reward on, because otherwise people could just be sending in every single property and these things get quite expensive. So if it meets our criteria, we then pay a £20 M&S Amazon voucher. I think there's a new voucher company we're working with as well. If we subsequently buy the building, you get 1% of the purchase price. So we just bought something in Balham a few weeks ago, whereby the owner received £10,000 from us. And we get one of those huge checks made up, which are great fun to have.
Oh, what, the big cardboard
Yeah,
one?
the big card, they're great.
Are they real?
Yeah, well, no, you can't bank them. No, you can't bank. Well, come on, if you can find a bank that's open, that'd be ideal. No, you can't bank any of them.
Yeah.
Can I ask, are you the principal buying it, or is it you, or you take it to people, clients?
No, we are solely principal.
Okay.
You know, that's a really good question that you actually asked. I'll tell you one of the reasons why.
Surprising.
It's because, I'll tell you the reason why. I do think that there is a lot of people out there who pretend to be principal, but they're acting as agent, and I think that's really...
Name drop.
Yeah, no. And then, a guy called Alex, you probably have heard of him. And it's happened to us before. People have come into our office and said they want to buy something, but they're not the actual buyers. And I see them out or whatever else, and I'm just embarrassed. For me, if I'm buying a building, it's up to me. It's up to me whether I want to buy that building. Is same with Nick. There's no one else making that decision. And I think that's really important, because we took that view from quite early on to make sure that we were principal. You know, this thing
must be tempting. You must see something that's not quite right for us, but I know who'd want that.
No, actually, not. Alex, I'll be honest with you,
there is a
really.
bigger piece to it, though, because of the way that we operate. We can't be seen to be using the data that we hold for someone else's benefit.
Yeah.
So we're very, we're very guided by what we're allowed to do. So it's difficult. So you then have to pass on information, and then it doesn't work.
We are absolutely protected by data protection, GDPR, and it's a big thing, and a lot of people are aware of it. There's something called a TPS. I don't know if you even know what the TPS is.
Go on, what is that?
It's a telephone preference service. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you can register to be on that service, so that your telephone number can't be given out to third-party data companies. And it's they're quite clever, these companies, because what they do a lot of the time is that you tick a box, right, where you consent to something without realising you're consenting to it.
How often are you flicking through on Facebook and you click on the article and it's like, well, even if it's the football ones, you're like, do you consent to your data?
Yeah.
And
I thought
eventually,
you had to click yeah, otherwise you can't read it.
correct. Or you pay £1 and then you don't do it, but everyone goes for the free one, and then your data's then pinged across the thousands of partner companies. If you actually read through the list, it's like 614 legitimate partners and all those other.
Right.
Then people buy the data, and then we use the data. But you have to use the data in a certain way as well. You can't just use the data for the purpose of advertising, for example. You can't do that. A lot of it's to do asset reunification and working in a professional capacity with it. Otherwise, data gets misused. And data's a massive thing. Certainly, if you think about COVID, just go to the toilet. You had to give, all your details, didn't you, back in the day? So, and people are very skeptical about their data, where we get their data from. But we're abundantly clear. We use consented data. It's not like we've got like this magic book of, people's telephone numbers.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. I wish it was. It'd be a lot easier if there was.
Do you miss the chasing and running down the lead? I used to do site assembly, and I used to do exactly that for a propco company. And the buzz you got, almost better than actually buying the building. Everyone's saying you can't get hold of this person, and then you end up knocking on the neighbour's door and going somewhere else, and you get them, and it's like result.
We had a situation this week. Funny enough, we bought a building last year, which we no longer own. We sold it and bought it off a. It was at the time they were joint tenants. Do you know what joint? They had the building as joint tenants, right. So when one died, it was transferred to the second person, to the other person, well, whatever at the time, and it was quite interesting because the person who passed away first, no one could find this person, so we bought off the family who were the executors of the individual who passed away second, because legally she was the owner of the property. Okay, we go and register the property at the land registry, and land registry refuse our application. They're not happy that we are saying that the person who's deceased is the person who lived in that property, even though there's a joint tenancy situation. And it's even up to yesterday has been causing us a problem. And we have been at the British Library, British Archives, trying to find information it's really, really tricky because, dead people are hard to get hold of, right? So,
And how common is that of assets you're buying? Is that a common occurrence over time, or it's a one-off really?
If you can't, the problem is like it's very, very difficult. That's like very unique, that situation where you really can't, where you think you've got them, and for a general sort of litmus test, would you believe this person is correct based on everything you presented? You'd be like, yeah, but they weren't satisfied, and so you've had to go back an extra 20 years of proving where this person's address was beforehand.
Yeah, back to 1970s and try and figure it all out back from them. It's tricky. It is really, really tricky.
Do you hire professionals for that?
We do it in-house. We have our own in-house genealogists.
Wow.
Did you train them?
Yeah, we did train them actually, funny enough, because you can't, I'm aware there isn't really a recruitment company who offer them out. Yeah, we did train them. We bought in so as USpot was evolving, we ended up bringing in someone who was working for a genealogy firm at the time and helped us take USpot to the next level of understanding data, looking at data, understanding how to find someone. Like there's a lot of people who do stuff on the bona vacanti list. Do you know what that is? So
it's an amazing thing.
So the Treasury. I think if they can't find a property after 12 years. Oh no, sorry.
The bona vacanti list is when someone's died without any known heirs.
Correct.
So like they've got literally no family, and they might be born abroad or whatever it is, but it's almost impossible to trace someone up to a certain point. And I think it's 7 years that someone has to find an heir, and so they'll say like Mr. Smith died. This is where he lived. If you've got any way of proving that you're a contact, effectively, it gives everyone who's an heir hunter or trying to figure out how to buy the property a way to try and find this person. But if they can't find it after a certain period of time, it gets absorbed into the Crown.
Yeah. You have 12 years, I think. Then
would the Crown just hold those assets,
no,
or
so I saw one recently whereby a house was for sale at auction. There was a house not too far away from me in Mill Hill, whereby they couldn't. Well, we were trying to find the owners. No one could find them. An African family. And the reason why I say that is because that does matter actually in terms of finding people, in terms of their names and their origins.
And birth certificates. If you can't trying to get a birth certificate from somewhere abroad, and not everyone has that. So if they're born in 1930s, the chance of them having, a viable birth certificate, someone's going to recognise as.
So there's a list that got a countdown on it. You're looking at list and you're saying that's worth investment in trying to research it.
We don't do that.
Yeah.
The big research firms, they will do that. I'm not sure if they still do it, but I think comes out every month or every Thursday it comes out, something like that.
But it is
where the Treasury put for a bona vacanti list, and then people scurry around to try and find the owners.
But it's bigger than just the properties. These are sometimes huge estates, and so it's a bigger piece. And what they'll do is, there's companies like Finders and all these other big air hunting companies. They will sign you up. They'll phone you up and say, by the way, we think you're the second cousin connected to this estate. If you want to get if you want to be included in it, you have to sign away 20% or 30%, and then they'll sign them up, introduce them to the estate, and they'll get 30% of anything that person inherits. Yeah. So you sometimes get multiple family members signed up by different genealogy companies.
You get sent so many properties a week.
Sorry?
How many properties do you get sent a week?
We get on average about 500 to 600 a week.
Wow.
Oh my god!
But a lot of those won't qualify.
I presume a lot of those are beaten up, run down. How do you decipher through the crap? I mean, clearly you'll look at local values and whatnot. But
I can tell you what's interesting. Values are relevant to us.
Really?
Value is simply irrelevant. No, in terms of it is
to a certain extent. Yeah, we won't look.
Buying a building for 8. I had a deal agreed last year for $5.5 grand.
What?
Really?
Yeah, and the lawyer called me. He was like, Ben, I'm happy to fund this for you if you want. I think I've got this one. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm successful, but I think
where was that in Hull?
I don't even know.
Yeah,
I don't even know where it was.
But as long as the end value is round about £100,000 in modernised condition, there's a big market for people buying stuff. So if you think about it, if you're trying to sell a property, there's so many more people who can afford £100,000, £200,000, £300,000, and they're brickies, and they've got an electrician as a cousin, and their dad's a plumber, and they can do this stuff for 20 grand, and that's it. So they all see these as these projects that they can buy and get involved in. So so like something that we picked up for £5 grand. But there's also the work behind it, the tracing, sorting it all out, getting the solicitors. So it's a bigger piece, but that might then sell when we've sorted that out after 18 months. That might sell for £40,000 as a potential project to someone.
All right.
Okay.
So
Sorry, go on.
I can say 500 buildings come in. You cross-reference your database and categorize. We've seen this. Does that halve it, or does it take it down?
Much less.
Much less. Yeah.
Less. We buy on average. We is circa around 1%.
No, that's not what he's asking.
Yeah. I'm saying that. I'm watching the breakdown. How do you get?
So
I can tell you actually. I can show you this week.
Yeah.
I can show you this week.
the way it works roughly is that I think when we were just sort of London and the sort of M25, we sort of expanded it out to other towns and cities, and we kept on expanding it. We had sort of a 2 or 3 year period where most things were qualifying because we hadn't seen them before. But if we get sort of 400 properties in now, it might be stuff that was spotted 3 years ago. So it's still a really useful thing for a business to have in terms of someone saying, this is still fucked.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
just
and it's
give
got
you an
even
idea.
worse, or they send a new spotter picture and it corroborates what's already been said before. But it's probably,
Well,
I think it was about a third of things sort of qualified, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, rough. This week we had 948 new spots.
Wow.
And we had 433 new spotters, and we converted 234 leads to opportunities. Wow. But that doesn't mean you're going to buy them.
No, of course not.
Which is great. If
Out of them, how many would you
what's
say?
the hit
buy,
rate?
you're
200 or so.
you buy roughly
good
around
exposure.
1%.
Yeah.
You
So
buy-
are
you buy
you
roughly-
are you spending a lot more than you're making?
No, because that'd be a terrible business model.
Well, no, but like, do you have a lot of property? Do you have a massive portfolio?
Yeah, we own quite. Nick and I own quite a bit. The running cost of the business of us, yeah, you're right. It's a fair question. You know, if you were to break down the cost of actually buying that building, it's not just the financial element of buying that building in terms of the monies you're laying out. If you were to break it down to the exact cost per lead, the cost per lead is expensive. The cost per lead is very, very expensive.
Okay. So you find, keeping the maths easy, you find 1,000 properties a year. A month.
Yeah.
And then you quickly shortlist down to 100, and that 100 is your land registering, you're employing your team, go for it, then bring me back a high level of where we're at, and then you decide to pursue further and
Yeah,
further.
correct. So in terms of finding people, we find mostly everyone.
Yeah,
But
okay.
that does not mean, as you were proving out, that doesn't mean that they want to sell their building.
of course,
We
yeah.
can find our strike rate of finding people, I reckon it's around 90%.
Okay,
Actually,
that's good.
we can find anyone and everyone, but it does not mean
and then you
they
go-
want to sell that building. Yeah.
So I'm very interested, like I said in the intro, one of the most intriguing and exciting business models. I'm interested to know from my perspective. I'm walking down the street, I see a derelict property. How do I know to contact You Spot Property? Because I'm being honest, I hadn't heard of you until only a few weeks ago.
I think it's a really good question, because unless you're looking to so we've been on loads of things recently. Like we're on the BBC. We've been in all the newspapers.
We're in the press a lot for the work we do on bringing empty buildings back into use. We were in the Sun last week. I think we were in Express yesterday. So I don't know. You need to read. You need to read. More interesting.
do you have a-
He's not part of that generation.
No,
They
no,
don't
yeah.
read
My algorithm
print
is
press
not
anymore.
big.
we have just started a big push
it's
on
interesting.
TikTok,
We're
stuff
doing
like
a
that.
lot now on socials. A lot. We have one video. I think I've got 500,000 views.
Wow.
I don't even know. It's difficult. You would probably tell me, Matt, better what actually gains the interest. It's difficult to know what, if me and Henry were doing a dance on TikTok naked running around an empty building, that might get
It'd
us
be
more.
really depressing.
But
yeah.
why people?
Might get you nicked.
Yeah.
People want to know.
Yeah.
The truth is, people would love to know about the dead people.
Yeah.
People want to know how much money you're making, how much money you're losing, all of that stuff that's probably quite uncomfortable to talk about. That's what people want to know.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah, we're not the sort. we're not sort of ego type people
But it
where
is-
we
but it is all
talk about how much money we make and don't make.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
not-
of
We're not
course.
those sorts of people, and
it's
also
no different to normal property. You're looking to make anywhere between 15 and 25%.
It's a different market, isn't it?
Yeah, just
It's
a
a
different.
different. We deal with it. We deal with
The
the
way-
absolute dirt of like shit of the shit, the worst. I could show you some videos of the worst, the better. As in buildings, but you can't I was speaking to a clearance guy on the way up here. 95 grand just to clear the building, just to clear it.
This was
alone.
fucked.
Yeah, we've got 2 gun at the moment, 30 grand, 20, and what people collect over the years.
There's a lot of hoarding stories. People there's a lot of mental health involved in why, why property has been left empty. It's normally, so it's a classic stories like sort of spinster women, sort of older men who'd lived with their brothers and sisters, and they lived in their parents' house. So it's been in the same family hands for at least sort of 70, 80 years, and then it's someone's cousin who ends up inheriting the property because Uncle Joe, who lived in his house, dies at 93, and the place is it's not been touched since the 1960s. But these aren't the sort of people that are then going to estate agents to have them rifling through their house. They don't want, you know, their family to be embarrassed by stuff. So they want people to come in and solve their problems. They don't have deeds. They don't have access to solicitors. They don't. We bought from someone recently who genuinely didn't have the internet or like a smartphone. And so these people were lovely people. It was a bit sad because the brother who were inheriting the property, had early onset dementia. But like they had a house that was worth at least £300,000 that had been empty for 7.5 years. But because they didn't trust people and they couldn't get it, they were living in a council flat.
Wow.
Money, can I say something, which is why it's quite interesting about the people we buy from? Because a lot of our focus on our PR is to do with getting the properties reported to us. And we don't say much about the people we buy from because it's a lot of the times quite sad, actually.
It's very sad.
It is sad. And whereby we are in it for a commercial reason, and for sure we are. But we actually help a lot of people. I know you think, oh yeah, but you make money out of it. Yeah, we do make money out of it. Kill us, so be it, okay? We do. But my goodness, if we weren't involved if we were not involved in this process, these houses would remain in the condition that, you know, that they are.
Yeah, I would say 95% of what we do, if we weren't involved, wouldn't progress anywhere. So I think from the outside, people look at it and they go, oh, you're making so much money, you might not have done that much work to the property. But they don't see the 2.5 years worth of research beforehand.
Well, you're making the country a better place.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very nice way of putting it.
It is sad. It is sad because what I say to people, when I say life gets on top of you, life gets in the way of life, right? And we all have certain things in our lives that you push down the priority list. You know, you like, for example, I don't know, something you just can't be asked to do because you know it's difficult to do. So it just gets, and there's people who aren't interested. They're interested in the money when you start negotiating with them. All of a sudden, they're interested in the money. But in terms of Henry's right. In terms of having someone realise the asset and taking that money and going, right, I can now lead a slightly different life. I can do this. It doesn't. It just does not interest them.
Would you say that's more common situation of them people not knowing that they own the building?
No. I actually think the opposite.
Yeah, they
I think they know they own the building, but they know that it's so difficult to deal with that building. Someone might live 200 miles away, right? Get a lot of people. I had a case recently whereby it's, you know, you talk to people and you don't know whether to laugh or cry when they're telling these stories. She said, so I want to sell the building. She said, but before you go in, I need to go in and get rid of the spirits.
What?
I was like, what spirits? She said, you know, the spirits in the house. I said, look, just so you're clear, I don't mind going into the house and clearing it. She goes, no, I can't let you in because of the spirits. Okay, and it's not for me to question. I go, wait, you're completely bonkers. I'm not entitled to do that. She thinks there's spirits in the house. I don't know if there are. Maybe she's right. I don't know. But
did you go in?
You can't. Yeah. No, but you can't.
Not yet.
You can't. To understand that mentality is alien. So what we try and do is just be there for a lot of these people as a support network, and the effort that goes into buying one of these buildings. To get people to get, you can take a horse to water, but to get it to drink is.
It's a very different perspective. But I've been dealing with the faith groups.
Yeah.
And the amount of education and help you give, they wouldn't have got anywhere near a building without your help and giving them the time of day to do it and listening to their stories as well. And you get agents saying, well, they may bring a building to the market and I might represent 10 different churches trying to buy it. They're saying that's outrageous. That's not RICS compliant. But those 10 are getting educated, and I'm just training them and training. They're not capable of buying a building now, but the process they've walked, they will be capable. It might take 2 years, 3 years, and you are kind of giving back. And yeah, as you said, I'm earning money, and but there is so much backstory that people don't appreciate what you're putting back.
And I do think,
and
as
especially with what you guys do as well, it's like the amount of properties that the buildings were poorly used, they weren't serving the community properly, like. These are things that need rescuing and sorting. So it's not like, it does benefit everyone to have like an active community, and like one of the big things that I think people don't necessarily see what we do is that, could you imagine living next door to one of these houses that was like the windows rotting? The houses are worth, we bought one in Edgware, wherever it was like £600,000 houses, £700,000 houses next door to an absolute like Kazi of a building. And it'd been like that for 15 years and no one could sort it out. We come along, sort it out, and then it's then going to be in the next couple of years, that street is going to be much better, and everyone on that road's going to be pleased.
Actually, have you ever queued up at Arsenal Station? Have you seen the house on the right? It's like, whenever people walk past it, it's like rats in it. It's disgusting. Everyone always looks at it. It's like,
Send it over.
Would be near Arsenal.
I was going to say,
though,
there's
wouldn't
one
it?
on where I live.
You don't really see that at Spurs, really.
no.
Are there buildings you like
you
there?
definitely do.
Yeah, if you're driving up it, you definitely do.
Are there buildings that you're like, yeah, thanks, seen that one? You know, like it comes around.
Sticks around for
every,
years.
You get loads. One of the problems
Yeah.
you get loads of dupes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Of course.
so a lot of the stuff that
Duplicates, yeah.
so many people get duplicates because people walk in the same streets. But one thing we're pushing out at the moment, and if people are listening and watching this podcast, use Google Street Maps.
Yeah.
You don't have to be walking through the street. Like some of our best spotters,
We've got an amazing story.
they use Google Street Maps.
There's a
They'll
good-
just put an area in or whatever else, and they'll go up and down the street trying to, because we do it ourselves. When we look at a building, go, that building's quite interesting. That you probably do it yourself, Alex. When you're driving around or whatever else.
That garden's unbelievably overgrown. You can see from some satellites straight away which gardens are overgrown.
Have you
Can you
got
have a little black book of people that are just consistently?
Yeah, they
We
must
do.
have.
They come to us.
Yeah, you do have repeat spotters.
Yeah.
You do.
Is there a specific profile of your spotters, or are they really random? Now, I was thinking that because
That's a good question.
he's a young guy. He has not really heard of you yet. He's in that social media world. And tell the truth, I hadn't heard of you until we went to MIPIN and I found out about your model. But is there a typical profile?
Yes, there is. I'd say it was quite interesting because we did we did a bit of work on that last year because we did some stuff for what's the TV channel?
GB News.
GB News. I think we did some stuff for them, and they did ask about because we tried to figure it out because you try and figure out who your target audience. I think women in their late 40s.
Dog walkers.
Yeah,
I would have
so,
said.
yeah.
I would have said Jews.
Yeah, no. That's a little bit racist, but no.
We can all say that.
No, women in their late 40s, I think, or something like that. People in their late 40s.
Is that dog walkers?
Well, no, I tell you,
just whether it was.
most of what I would consider are good spots come from typically neighbours or people on the street where they're so fed up, and you can't believe how little power local authorities have to actually get situations resolved. So if you're imagine genuinely if someone's died and you know they've died, but their house next door has been vacant for 3 years, it's like, there's squatters, there's fire damage, kids breaking all the windows, garden overgrown, rats, all this other stuff. So they report it to local authority. They might cut down the garden, or they might, enforce them, like put, whatever it's called on the windows, like protection on the windows and stuff. But you're still living next to this house, and they can't force a sale. All they can do is try and lead the owners down the path of a sale.
So just because the owners hate the council.
Yes.
Everyone hates the council.
I don't know if you find the same with people you deal with, Alex, but they think they're like the police. They just think they're trying to get involved in their lives. And I actually feel sorry for these empty homes officers because their hands are tied so much with red tape and bureaucracy. But we got a case at the moment, a house we bought in Leicester, whereby the council made him leave his own house because of how unsafe it was to be there.
He had stuff in his house, like every single room was like head height filled with crap.
Yeah.
But it wasn't untidy, it was just filled with stuff.
But it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe for him to be there.
Stuff could fall.
It just wasn't safe. We had
The stairs, literally, he could it would have taken one tumble down the stairs. He never would have got out of there. Like he would have. It sounds terrible, but these people are like. We had a situation. I'll never forget because I've only been with the company a little while. We went to someone's house. Oh, where was it? It's down in like Balham sort of way. But we went to the house, and I walked in. I said, "So where's the bathroom?" Oh no, we took out the bathroom. I was like, "What do you mean you took out the bathroom?" They're like, "Yeah, we just use this sort of like we fill up like a bucket in the sink and we wash ourselves with a cloth." I was just like, and that's how this couple. And they had like from the outside, nice garden, really lovely flowers everywhere. You walk inside, and it wasn't bad, but they took away their shower like 15 years ago.
Yeah, the worst one you go in and there's excrement in jars where people don't want to. They just don't use toilet.
There was something
Well,
like
can
300 bottles
I tell
filled
you
with
something?
piss,
And it's not only in these areas of lower value buildings. There was one in West Hampstead, and the lady. We went to this house. An LD lady was in there, right? And we met her daughter. Lovely family. So this house, the ceiling was coming in. You wouldn't let your family live in there. You wouldn't let anyone live in there. I said to her, look, you do realise how dangerous it is. There's ladders going up the stairs. For her to have a shower, she had to go to her mate's house down the road. I said, what? I said, can I ask you, why don't you just leave? I said, you own 2 other buildings. Yeah, but my doctor's close by.
Wow.
That's what she said. And you're like,
Some people.
all right. And you can't have You can't. To us, that's just mental. But why these people get themselves in these situations? Like I said, life gets on top of you. That is for sure. That is what you see a lot. And people, certainly, there's a lot of serious health conditions, huge family disputes. People fall out of each other.
So many
people fall out of each other. It's really, really.
Do you know one
sad.
of the big reasons as well when wills are disputed? Because what will happen is that someone will have written a will. Like I don't know if you guys have written wills, but if you haven't written a will, you definitely should do.
You definitely should
But
write a will.
But if people write a will and they write it when they're sort of in their 50s or 60s and they don't really think about it, but they're then in care, their family aren't nearby, they've got a carer or one member of a family who might be, they get them to write another will. And they'll get it signed, but it might not be like a fully witnessed will. But these then go to court and they're disputed for like 4 or 5 years. And all that time, that house is sitting there, like subject to like any number of issues.
What about the one that's been 25 years where the co-executor won't sell? There's one at the moment, we've been working it for years and years, and her sister won't sell.
Oh, yeah.
And she doesn't want to take us. It's incredible what you learn. So in certain religions, there's certain ways they treat each other. So like some families don't want to have a dispute with their family members because it goes against their religious principles.
That's Muslim.
Well, no, in Hindu religion as well, it's quite common.
Right.
Jews as well, it's quite common actually in terms of, it's common. I won't say it's just common. People would rather not fall out with their family per se, or put their family sort of under any sort of risk or worry. But it is interesting when you see this stuff that happens, where you just get one family member, no, not selling it.
Correct.
And you've got to go to court and apply to court.
Because if you can be joint executors and joint beneficiaries, and if you're deciding that you don't want to sell the property, you don't have to sell it. But you're actually then effectively shafting your family member who's expecting £100,000 worth of inheritance, and you're not selling it. So you're not playing ball, but you're both executors. So you have to then take them to court to get them removed as an executor. But to do all of that, there's no guarantee that's going to happen. And then that's it. The property's just
And is that where you get involved in
No.
sometimes? You will say, all right, I'm going to back you. I think you can win
Yeah,
it.
correct. Yeah, so correct. So a lot of deals, we do structure deals in that way, whereby we'll be the mediator between family members. I've done that before.
It does help being in the middle without having...
I've got a case at the moment, funnily enough, whereby I'm not naming roads, but there were 4 family members, one that passed away, their parents passed away. They all should have inherited the house. The brother's living in the house, and he's very well. What they told me, the sisters, he's very well known to the police. Very, very well known to the police. They want to sell the house because they want to realise the value of the property, and they think that he is occupying the house illegally. So now we're working with them to get vacant possession of the house. So our contract is a subject to vacant possession contract. So we will pay all the associated fees and all the associated costs. There's a point though where, it's being challenged in court next week actually, whereby you look at it and the out of the contract is if there's a significant challenge. If this guy raises a huge challenge, say no, here's a piece of paper. And this is one of the problems as well with squatters and whatever else. If they say here's a piece of paper from the owner, said I can live in this property. A judge has got to take a view to say whether that's accurate or inaccurate.
They're very reluctant. Where you find it again is where there's like one family member who stays on living at the property. Like we were saying, but there's 4 other members who need to benefit from the property, but the courts will not kick him out of the property.
I've got a question. Why don't you have an app?
Because the reason we don't have it, and that's a good question, is because you have to continually upgrade your iOS all the time, and the cost is very, very expensive. But we have looked into it. But thank you, Matt.
You think you'll ever have one?
No, we never had one because we've looked. Number one, we don't think it's going to. There's a question whether it's going to increase our spot in the amount of people reporting to us. Mm-hmm. We don't think it will, against the cost of doing it. I mean,
how do people report to you now? They just send an email.
I've literally just I haven't done the full thing, but it's very easy. It's very simple. It almost seems a bit fake. It's that easy.
Good question. Yeah. That's it. Do you know what? You should be an interview for a job. You're really good at it.
Yeah,
so
one
right.
day.
So one thing that people question you on is your honesty and how valid you are as a company. And we have been on this morning, GMTV, where you get these people called, what's she called, that lady?
Coupon Queen.
The coupon queen.
Kid.
And the coupon kid. And they validate you. And Martin Gilbert, who's the guy?
Martin Lewis.
Martin Lewis validates you. Validates you. But it makes a massive difference because people think it's a scam. Of course they do. And we get people, these houses are for immigrants. So many people respond on social media. and people don't like it. But yeah, you're right. Like people want to know you're real, so that's why we do all the stuff in the press. So when people are talking to us, we say, look, Google me. This is who I am. Yeah, this is me. You're talking to the owner. You're not a company behind that. Yeah, you'd probably find that, Alex. Like people want to deal with you, right?
100%.
They want to deal with you. It's
Well,
not
the
like,
Alex or Alex mine.
yeah.
Get it every day.
It says your surname, Martin.
No, I think,
But also, why is it
important?
why is it report a property and not submit a property?
It's a good or spot a property. It's a good question, and I can't give you an accurate answer to that because it gets discussed a lot. Because does the word report make it look like it's formal, right? And
It makes it seem a bit negative. It makes it seem like you're trying to. I'm sorry to slate your business model here,
No.
but
Good, man. I've never heard you speak like this.
Hey, Matt, cheers, mate. You've always
Be
liked you.
okay.
yeah, report is like
Slap on the wrist.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, you're right. Like we've looked at the wording before and we've changed, our U-Spot branding has changed recently. One of the things I think with business, this is something quite interesting as well, is that when you go for a bad time of your business, I'm sure all of us, well not you, you're just come out of your mum's womb, but but for us older generation, you've probably gone through bad times in your business, right? And you sit there and you analyse your business week in, week out. It happened to Nick and I. We had a building we bought in Balham in 2016, just before Brexit. And we were hemorrhaging. We were absolutely hemorrhaging money. I think we took a close to £1 million loss. And we were every single week, we were sitting with our accountants, doing cash flow forecasts, doing this and doing that. And we were running it as if a business should be run. But when things are going well, you don't ever look at that. You don't stop and go, actually, what you're doing there, we don't. And you're right, because when things are going well and you're being constantly reported property, you rarely stop and go, actually, how can we make it better? And there was a brilliant podcast by the guys who launched Instagram, podcast called How I Built This. Do you ever listen to that?
No.
I mean, it's not as good as this podcast, but I'm saying that they take all these companies and all the owners of the companies, they say how they start the companies. And the Instagram thing's really interesting, and I refer to it a lot, because when they launched Instagram, they spent the first 6 months trying to understand why people weren't using Instagram. They had 100 users or something like that, whatever it is, listen to the podcast. And then they were like, well, wait a minute, but why are there 100 people using Instagram? They completely changed the way that they were going to focus on what they are good at.
Right.
And then obviously Instagram is Instagram. But I think that's quite interesting in terms of what we do as well, in terms of, people say, why don't you go into the commercial market? Why don't you go into this? That's not our area of expertise. We are good at taking a building that's been sitting empty for God knows how many years and bringing it back into use. And the more we can get of those, then the richer we'll become. So great.
And do you have spotters on a retainer fee?
No, because they get 1% of the purchase price if we successfully buy the property. No, we don't.
And like, what's the most someone's earned?
It maxes at 10 grand.
Is there anyone that's had like an unbelievable year?
Yeah,
Repeat business.
So Ben was talking about the chap who uses Google Maps to do a lot of his spotting. He's had something like 400 qualified properties. So that's just by itself is like £8,000 worth of vouchers. And we bought something like 9 of his properties. So he goes.
He must do that for a living.
I think he does.
I think he actually
does.
travels. I think he does some sort of like travel and writing blog. But he literally goes. We see like he's on Facebook and he goes around the world and he takes pictures and he's traveling and so he'll then spend a couple hours doing this, send about 40 spots in and see what happens. But
it's mad. I've never met him. I spoke to him.
No, the girls have all.
Surely you go out for dinner with him.
No, he doesn't. I'm not sure
I
he
don't
actually
think
exists. Does he actually exist?
No.
All I do is see this guy's name. I don't think he exists. He's like on the internet
does.
somewhere doing his thing. He's clearly got some sort of algorithm, whatever he's doing.
It works.
Because we've looked at
some of the stuff. We do wonder like how he knows some of the properties because he's consistently very good at finding
Right area, same areas.
it's
or-
good. It's good
across the
for
country. Across the country.
And does he only?
I think when he realised that it was working,
and
he was getting like £400 worth of Amazon vouchers, it was like brilliant. This is easy, and then just
How much can you buy on Amazon?
Yeah, I think you can
Quite a
buy a
bit,
lot.
Ben.
Yeah. And this guy.
Quite a lot.
But
Oh, so what was I
£8,000
going to say?
worth of
I used
Amazon.
to have this thing like, how much could you go into?
I don't know.
If
But
you went
you
into
can
sport,
you
if
can
went
ask
into
my
Sports
wife because
Direct-
she spends a lot of money on Amazon.
If you went into Sports Direct for £100, how much could you buy in Sports Direct?
Probably
It's
not
gone are the days where you could spend. You come out with those big, huge tennis balls.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I'd buy from there.
About 15 Sondico balls.
And why John Lewis? Do you have like a partnership with them?
Amazon.
Amazon.
Oh, I thought you said John Lewis at the start.
Was it? Who was it? It's
Yeah, and Marks and Spencer's and Amazon. Yeah,
M&S.
M&S.
Oh, M&S and Amazon.
No, we don't have a. We don't. We make contributions to charities. So if a lot of time people will ask us, can we make a contribution to a charity? Either a spotter will ask us when we pay them, or the owner will ask us.
What, instead of getting their voucher?
Yeah, and or would you mind making it? And of course we do, and of course we do. And we get some charities that want to align themselves with us, but because we can't be seen to do that, because if you said to me, would you mind giving money to X charity? I can't say no because I'm only aligned to this charity. So we do that, and we sponsor other things. It's difficult to know where to go with it, but yeah.
Okay, and you don't have to answer this. This might be an uncomfortable question, but presuming starting this up, you'd have to have quite a lot of capital.
Yeah.
How did you get that?
So Nick and I first met when Nick was working for another company. I don't want to name that company anymore. And we were trading. We had a trading property business that was successful, and we have access to money. And having access to money makes the world of difference. The money is in the business and in the buildings that we buy, because we're constantly reinvesting the money. So you might earn £1. Same day you spent £3. You really don't really see the fruits of your, and I'm not saying it's hard for us or whatever compared to other people, you don't really see the fruits of your labor, and then you start getting in, have relationships with banks.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a misnomer, because if you've got a good deal, you will find funding. You don't need money to start a property business.
Yeah.
You don't really like.
Well, no, because the argument is with a building is that you're putting your money into bricks and mortar. Okay, so God forbid if you had to get your money, unless you've made a monumental error, and we've made errors in the past, that most of the time you can get your money out. You might take a slight hit, maybe, but it's you can control it, right? Whereby you put your money into stocks and shares. And I don't invest in the stock market because I've got no control over it. But if I want to buy a building, I can open it for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Cyclically, the market moves in certain areas. There's certain areas in the country that don't move. Certain places up north and whatever else, you see that the market doesn't move. But as long as if you're a bank, think about how easy it is if you're a bank, right? I've got a £200,000 loan. I was looking to see, I've got a 200 grand loan on a building in Birmingham that I own, okay? They've got a 25-year mortgage. By the time I pay that mortgage back, I would have paid that bank $715,000. The banks are absolute. And what risk are they? 65% loan to value.
That's it. They're just relending it out all the time.
To be a bank, that's where the money is. That is where the banks have no risk.
Well, they've got unlimited money.
Why aren't you and Nick sorting that one out then?
No, we just have them. It's interesting.
You spot banks.
It's interesting, but dealing with the banks at the moment is impossible as well, because they don't want to take the risk. Everyone got hit, I suppose, during 2008 and other crises. So dealing with the banks is difficult, but there are a lot of bridging lenders out there at the moment, loads and loads. When you go to MIPIN, for example, every other person, is a bridging lender. Yep. Everybody wants to lend money, but people are careful. But yeah, it's a good question. But we had access to funds, which makes a massive difference.
And speaking
when we started the business,
from you and Nick starting, I mean, how did you get the business out there? Was it marketing spent day one, or has that evolved over the
PR?
You spoke about GB News this morning. Was that day one you started?
PR. Yeah, we had a PR. We were working with a guy called David Stock of Meerkat PR, and I want to give him a massive shout out because he is.
What's his name? Sorry.
His name's David Stock of Meerkat PR, and he is absolutely brilliant because what he said, it can't just be when you're PR, and I don't know about PR. There has to be an interesting angle. There has to be a story to it. It can't just be like, oh, we're trying to buy a building. It doesn't work like. What is unique about what we're doing? Well, the empty property crisis is in the news a lot, right? It's constantly probably in the news every month at some point. So therefore, there's an angle on it, and Dave gets the angle, and he's a one-man band. He's absolutely brilliant.
He's very good at explaining things in really simplistic terms, and Nick will call him up or whoever and have an idea. He's like, yeah, but what's the point? He's South African. He's like, yeah, but what's the benefit?
Where's he from?
New Zealand, Australia, somewhere like that. But he's like, what's the point? So unless you've got a reason to be doing the PR. But he's very good.
So that is what that's what we relied on.
And that started day one.
Correct. And then Facebook advertising as well, because Facebook is good if you know how to use it. And we sort of had a rough idea what we were doing.
When the light bulb went on for the business, was it, this is what we're going to do, there's David, there's Facebook, and it all went at the same time, or was it more organic than that?
No, it's organic. We've grown our business and organic. We've never taken like SME lending, or we've never given equity away. We've grown it organically, maybe to our detriment. Maybe we could have grown much quicker. You know, I could have a whole another team. In terms of if we wanted to buy more buildings, we could take, it's 30 of us, we could take another 30 people, and that would even touch the site in terms of the opportunities that were out there. But we try and do it in a way whereby, it is, every business we've grown, it is organic, which I think is good and bad, because there are some people, like, again, if you look at the guys from Innocent, the guys who started Innocent, right? They say one of their biggest mistakes they made is they didn't take on better people sooner. I don't know if you ever listened to their podcast as well, is that, people are so mindful as to, it's like with staff, right? People don't want to go and spend 100 grand on a salary for someone because of the cost. So that's sometimes I look back and I think maybe we could have grown quicker. And even to this day, we look at it and think, is it worth spending money on X? It's difficult because when you're used to growing things organically, to change that part of you is, I think, really, really difficult. It's hard.
And if you've got someone who's really entrepreneurial, they're probably going to run off and do it themselves anyway. And there's that balance, isn't there, between having the talent, but maybe not too much talent, or you give them enough incentive to stay there.
I've got a very topical question. AI is coming in hot. Is that going to be an advantage to you or a big disadvantage?
We were literally talking about this today because I was sitting there on Tuesday night thinking we don't use enough AI. We are very...
I think you're watching porn.
That was in between watching porn. That was it. How do I find better websites? Scene, yeah. No, but I was saying we're very people reliant in our business to the extent that, so from you spot property, we're reliant on a person spotting the property. That then has to be vetted by people. We were trying to use a system that was actually AI driven to say, does this picture have all the different bits of that? But it's so subjective, right? And so we realized that actually we needed, I can't go into too much detail, but we needed like people to verify each picture. And then when 2 out of 3 people verify that a picture's interesting, it then goes to be qualified. So there's lots of layers behind every bit. And so...
Sorry, you're doing that to train an AI system at this
it's
moment?
Quite interesting.
No, but we thought we could.
But we learned this actually when we were speaking to one of the computer wizards. When you go on when it says you've got to put name the bicycle, right? You're teaching the computer. Yeah.
That's literally what you're doing every time.
I think if it's nothing to do with security, it's Google trying to teach the computer certain imagery
to recognize what it says. Put every traffic light, pick every box with a traffic light in it.
Bus.
Yeah, bus, whatever it is. Yeah, so it's like that's literally them telling. Every time a human tells it, then they're using that.
It's training Google to learn because and that's interesting.
AI is developing so much. I reckon in 2-3 years' time, you'll be able to get AI to spot properties for you.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, could it be a threat? Could some Chinese whiz kid open up a rival company and you're in the mud because this guy's pulling out thousands a day?
But Matt, you could drive around the country for the next 5 weeks, 6 weeks, go to various places and buy all the bananas, but you can find the owners. Yeah, it does not.
AI could.
It's difficult because of data. There's still data regulations involved with AI as well, and we do use AI. We do have systems in place at work that do scrape data using AI type ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's still people, though, isn't it? It's that relationship bond to actually close.
The trust.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, because
you've got to connect with someone.
You're 100% right. The trust is everything.
One of the guys in the office said we could have there's this new AI tool to call out on potentially leads that we're not that we don't deem particularly hot. We could call out on 10,000 leads a year using an AI bot. Then you've got no quality control over what the conversation is, how much time you're going to be wasting. I just think we're really good at identifying these type of properties. How do we find more of them? How do we buy more of them?
But also, Alex, if people didn't like you, they don't want to work with you. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's really important. That's why I think
I still want to work with you though.
That's why I think things like MIPing are important. Like back in the day when you used to go to all the auctions and whatever else, you get to know people, and if people like you, they will want to work. They will want to work with you, and I think that's 90% of it actually. I think you raised a good point about trust. So if people, we had a story. We had a story whereby, some of the stuff you hear, she was this lady who fucked us around. I can't even begin to tell you how much the lady fucked us around, yeah? And
We shall not mention her name.
we won't mention her name. And one of the guys who she was speaking to a lot, and he was taking up a lot of her time. Okay, sorry, she was taking up a lot of his time. And she was like, I should have shagged him in the garage. I was like, why didn't you shag her in the garage? It would have been so much. She was like 80 years old. I was like, dude, come on, man. We're trying to do a deal here.
He would have had it all.
Yeah.
In the will.
I'm not sure what his wife, but
No.
yeah, you are right. Yeah, you are right. People want to work with you if they like you. And I think that is half the battle. So we do rely on reviews, actually. We didn't used to believe in reviews. But I think
you-
people,
you
those
should
reviews
be.
are genuine.
How competitive is the sector you're in? I mean,
It's
I'm sure you
becoming
get
more competitive.
one-man bands, people buying in auctions, and those. But Propco-wise, competitors, people out there competing with what you're doing, is it people have seen your model and they're trying to replicate it?
Yeah, there
or-
are people who try. There are people who try and replicate it, but we are years
so
ahead.
far in advance.
We're so far in advance. Doesn't mean that people don't know what they're doing,
No, for sure.
and people take the view that there's enough out there. So good luck to me. I mean, I don't. You know, number one, you can't stand in anyone, you can't stand in anyone's way of doing it. It doesn't mean they're going to be successful. It's taking I think you asked someone else at the beginning. It takes a long time. Like Rome is not built in a day.
But
It takes a long time to get to where we've got to.
Our biggest competitor is genuinely, people who are neighbours, end users who know about the property, who aren't necessarily, haven't got 30 members of staff, who will pay 10% more than what we can pay. And that they're our biggest competitors. They're who we regularly lose out to. It's
There's
very
always
rarely
going to be special purchases.
there's-
It's very rarely another propco who's buying before.
You do see there are a lot of these fast house buying companies. I noticed quite a lot of those types of people. I don't know if they got the best. I mean, I don't ever portray us as a fast. We're not that company. That's not who we are. You know?
And by the sounds of it, it's quite data driven what you do.
Massively
On
data-driven.
average, from getting a qualified lead to actually buying something, what's the hit rate, sort of timing wise? What
I'd say 18 to 24 months.
really? So it's a long process.
It's a long
not.
process.
We get the lead. We've agreed it within 6
Just because we call
weeks.
you today does not mean that you
And is
will have
that
it.
them biting, or is that you
bit of-
having to hold their hand that whole way?
A bit of everything. So
Yeah.
a lot of it is that it takes sort of probably 3 to 6 phone calls before you actually necessarily can go and visit the property and have a proper conversation. And you can't be calling someone every 2 days. So you have an initial call that has to be about 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, an email gets sent out. Please, can you send a letter so I can show it to my whatever it is. It all takes a little bit long. But mostly it's because things like probate are often involved, and these guys haven't started probate. And so, it's sort of holding their hand through that process of getting the estate dealt with so that it can then be sold. And we're committing ourselves to the purchase.
But we are very process driven in terms of, I believe very much in process at work in terms of how we do things, because you're not going to get anyone making one phone call. When the amount of data that we are looking at, you're never going to get anywhere. You have to have processes in place for making phone calls, speaking to people, writing to people, going to see people. It's a whole process. So when we talk about the cost of buying a building, the costs are quite high. Actually, if you break it back down, into an hourly cost, let's say you would charge it on from an hourly basis. I'm sure Alex, you said the same. If you actually break it down, the amount of effort that you can put into buying a building.
It's usually the smaller ones take up the most time as well. You're
I wish
finding
it was.
at the moment.
It's like some of the bigger ones are easier. Some of
Yeah.
it's
You're
not.
dealing with a better caliber of person
Yeah.
often, or I find anyway. The smaller deals kill me.
You think so? You think so? It's tricky. It's like so many people we buy from don't have ID documents. Right? So many people don't have.
You literally have to verify with a bus ID.
Yeah.
They literally don't have passports. They don't leave the country. It's another.
So you said you buy roughly about 1% of the buildings that qualify.
Yeah.
Would you buy the other 99% if you could? Is there any?
So we've looked at it's good. We looked at the modelling recently. No, because cost of funds. Yeah. No, don't be wrong. We've got we're successful. We haven't got billions of pounds. You need millions upon millions upon. No, because you'll lose money. You'll make mistakes and you'll lose money. Holding costs for a building are expensive. And that deal that I said we lost close to £1 million, majority of that cost was bank costs, was financing costs. Yeah, because the banks have got you by the short and curlies, right? They don't give a shit. And I don't know if you've ever done stuff with banks before. They got PGs and they got everything.
They'll come for everything.
It's just expensive. It's very, very expensive.
And when we look at a property, because we were doing this analysis to see we must be able to buy more stuff. Like, how are other people buying at prices? and that, that we're selling them for example, or that we get gazumped by, we looked at them, but you're like, but if you're buying it for you, even if it doesn't need any work, it needs 5-10 grand. Because of the overheads and the cost, you have to be buying at less than 70% of the modernised value.
Yeah, it's around 60p in the pound.
So like no one wants to sell their house. If it only needs 10 grand, they're not going to sell to a company like us. So it just doesn't work. Like unless someone, I had a situation today where, I could tell the lady was interested in getting the property sold. She was reluctant to tell me over the internet, over emails, what she would take for it. But I had a conversation with today. It was valued for £250,000 2 years ago. It's taken a while to sort the estate out, and I think it's worth £280,000 modernised. It probably needs 60 grand spending on it. Yeah. I said to her, just trying to be a bit nice, because really we'd want to pay.
Did you agree that?
It might be, we'll see. But I really like the deal price is like 140, 150 on that property. And I said to her, just because I didn't want to sound like a total cunt, I was like, we'll probably pay 180, but I think there might be other routes for you to consider. And I explained, I've said that these are a couple of people you could speak to. And she came back to me 10 minutes later saying, do you think you could get to 190? And I was like, oh God, we've actually got a problem here, because we might have to try and buy this. Yeah. But like, even trying not to buy it, like that, but people.
But in answer to your question as well, is that when people inherit property, and people have probate, whatever else, a lot of people, it's their one chance in life to absolutely maximise it. And I will always encourage people to do that. I think that's really, really important. I say to people, you don't need to sell to us. Like, you don't need to sell to us. If you want to try and maximise the full value for that building, go and put it in the open market. Absolutely no problem at all, right? It doesn't make any difference to me. There's no agent involved. Go and do what you want. Try and get an owner-occupier to buy that building. You're probably still sitting there in 2 years' time because they can't perform or whatever else. So in answer to your question, why we don't buy everything, because people want the last penny.
And
I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
That's their prerogative, right?
If you were in their shoes, you'd be trying to.
But that's what. So we actually, as a calling to like the business, the buying side, we realise that as long as we're straight with people at the outset, I pretty much say to everyone, we are a property investment company. We're trying to make money out buying this property. What we offer is certainty and security. We're not going to fuck you around. If we say we're going to buy it for this, we're going to buy it for this. But if you want to get as much money as possible, we're not the best route for you.
Yeah, go.
And then as soon as you say that, they go, fair enough, or they're like, okay, we're not interested. But as soon as they engage with you, you've got a real chance of buying at that point. But I think historically, you sort of try and like pussyfoot around, like trying to get to a number and keep them really interested. But as soon as you make an offer that is 30% below their expectations, you've wasted hours and hours. So we get out ahead of it like much earlier.
But that goes back to your point about whether you be an agent or a principal. So I think if you're an agent, you might say, I'll try and buy the building and flip it into this person, that person. We don't do that, because luckily we have the opportunity where we don't need to do that, because we see so much opportunity. But coming out at the front of it and saying, we are making money out of this building, just so you're abundantly clear, we're not living there, but we're making money out of this building. If you've got an issue with that, don't send it to us. Really no issue.
And as a business, I mean, clearly you're looking at a lot. Is there a minimum profit formula you have that you'd be looking at?
So back in the day when Nick and I started, we used to work to around a 20% profit on turnover type model. And if you look across the year, our average is around 19%. That's roughly.
Is there a deal out there that you're like, wow, that was a good one that you always wine and dine over?
There was one actually. There was one.
There's a couple where you can't predict what some people are going to pay.
The one where we're sitting next to those guys in Mippin. I know we're talking about Mippin, but it's really random. Yeah. We had a building, and sometimes, they'll put a building to auction, maybe sometimes, right? Just
sorry, you got speaking the mic.
Sorry, so sometimes we may put a bit, we've sorted the whole thing out, right? So our ad val is clearing it, sorted everything out. It's taken us beyond, right, years to sort out, and we don't want to develop it. So we've got to put that property is now a position where it can be sold. So we'll put it to auction, for example. I remember we were sitting outside the. Where were we sitting outside? What's the
Cafe 72?
What's the one outside? What's the one in Mippin? Is that the Colton? What's it begins with M? The
Majestic.
No. Anyway, what's it called?
Oh, I know what it is.
What's it called?
It's on the corner, the Martinez.
Yeah, on the corner, the Martinez, right?
Well
so we're sitting there, and we went to one of these. I think we just went to one of the events that were done by one of the big banks. Just curious. I was actually curious to speak about probate in other countries. I was curious how it worked. And there's a lot going to auctions. We're sitting there having a coffee, right? And there's a couple sitting next to us. They're obviously business working for a bank, and they're talking about these things for £1 million here and £10 million there. Now, what do you guys do? We buy buildings for like 30 grand for that. Pathetic. Like he's scum. Like, everyone else. Like, what are you doing here? Where's your yacht? I was like, okay. So we had this building live, right? Yeah. I think we paid 100. I think we paid 200 grand for this building. I think it's sold at auction for 600 grand. We're watching this thing going up and up. We said, how many deals have you done with this sort of percentage? I said, no, come on, because you're talking to me that you're big time Charlie, right? You do these deals for trillions of pounds. I said, but we've just made 500%, 600% on your money, right? Now, of course, it's a one-off. It's unique. Why these guys got into a bidding war, I don't know. I've seen the guys try to sell the building 10 times over, but that was a massive win. Yeah. That was a massive. But then equally,
how common is that for you?
No, it's not
very rare.
It's rare. You have a rough idea what it's going to sell for. It generally sells.
I would say over the last 18 months, more often than not, it's gone slightly less than what we were expecting to go.
When you sell, do you always sell in auction?
No, we don't. We keep a lot. We don't always sell in auction. No, we develop a lot. We keep a lot. Auction's a good avenue when you're doing the volume that we do, right? That's really important because so our ad val isn't necessarily on the development side. It's getting to a property to a point where it can be brought back into use.
Yeah, I think that's because the misconception is that so many like people who are traders, they get offered things by agents and they're buying it and they're buying it cheap, or they get an opportunity, whatever it might be. None of our stuff happens quickly. Like none of it is like, so like when people hear that we've made like, we're turning something quickly, they don't see all the rest of it that goes behind it. We've not just been...
You've added your value elsewhere.
We've not taken advantage of an opportunity to just get in there. We've had to like put this whole thing together to make 30 grand on a 20 grand purchase.
But sometimes I do look at it. I got back, I think it was like one part this year, and I was like, what were you doing? Like trying to do these, like doing the effort that goes into buying a building for 5 grand like that one. The effort, it's the exact same effort as is to buying a building for £1 million.
We do want to buy more £1 million
and you're
buildings.
like, what the fuck is the point? You're generally like, what is the point? Like where you have to do so many of these things.
But you have a machine as well. You've got to service it.
But yeah, correct. Exactly. Yeah, your running costs are vast.
Yeah.
And that's so the business is great, don't get me wrong, but the running costs are vast, and it'd be great if you could use AI to scale it back, but it does very much rely on the human eye.
But we did work out that we were probably being, when we analysed all our deals, we were probably being a bit mean on some of what we could be. Oh. Ben was being a bit mean on some of the
No, because we're...
But the model, I presume.
Exactly.
You want to try and stick to that as much as...
And changing who you are is really difficult.
Yeah.
So like change, mine and Nick's philosophy is when we buy today, we know we can sell into the investment market tomorrow at a profit. That's always our analysis. That's always our risk profile. So when we're analysing a building, it's where is our the God forbid point. The God forbid if we get stuck with this.
That's what you said. Your out was always actually if we had to build it, what would we have to buy it for? Where we're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah. And build cost. I don't know.
We get those calls every day, and you spoke about bridgers at the moment. In a poor economy, people rely on bridging finance.
Yeah.
And we get bridgers call us and say, well, if Armageddon came tomorrow, what am I going to get for it? I presume your model's the same. You need to think of worst case scenario.
You do think worst case scenario. And me and Henry will butt heads a lot. And people call them mummy, when me and Nick, people are mummy and daddy are fighting. But we butt heads.
I call them daddy and daddy, but that's...
Each their own.
No, but we butt heads a lot on price. Not personal, but I don't want to make mistakes because I've seen it. I've been there, done it, made mistakes. And you make that mistake, that is real. When you're losing close to £1 million, it is a lot of
You will never meet someone who is more sort of conscious of... We'll look at deals, we joke about it, but we'll look at a deal and we'll look at a property and Ben's like, there's a lamppost outside. Or that, or have you seen there's a bus stop 2 houses up?
Yeah.
I think stuff like that.
He'll knock 20 grand off the price, but he believes it.
But if you're going to live, I tell you, if you're going to live there yourself, if you're living your right and you've got your missus going at you, like, do you want to buy? She's like, there's a lamppost outside. It's not ideal, is it?
I totally relate. I mean, in my faith-based business, it could be a lamppost, and you're like, well, how are they going to take a coffin in there? Where's the pastor going to park his car? And it'll literally take the building from being a unicorn.
Well, can't you just take the lamppost down?
Sounds like you're blaming the missus.
Council.
You don't own the lamppost.
And you can have 10 buildings with parking. 10 buildings with parking. 10 houses with parking.
Yeah.
Your one has a tree in front of it.
Yeah.
You cannot value that building the same as the building to live. You can't. If you think you can, in my view, you're a fucking moron.
Yeah. This is how the conversations go.
Can. If you think that, you're an idiot.
So the devil's in the detail for you.
And it's idea as well. It's idea for you to put another room in a building that's worth I don't know, 300 grand in the middle of Leicester, I don't know, something like that, and you could add a loft extension, you've got a house that's worth 600 grand, you're a fucking moron, because each area has a price. Yeah. It just has a price.
And we're very hot. Like whenever we've got new people join the team, it's like people look at, oh well, this 3-bed's worth that much, and but then that one's not got not got double bayed, or that one's a 1970s build. So like you have to really look at comparing apples with apples and not try and make your narrative fit by looking at one 3 roads down. That is not.
I do think people look at it and go, oh, if you add a loft here, or if you do this here, the house is going to become. People can't afford it. That's why.
It must be so hard.
That's why they're living over there.
There's not always like relevant comps.
No.
But if there's not a relevant comp, it's different to what you guys are doing. There's not a relevant comp. We're not buying it.
Yeah.
It's so difficult because we're trying to buy something at the moment that's a former chapel. There aren't that many former chapels within a quarter mile of what you're looking at.
See Alex's
within
face.
10 miles.
It's like a.
It's a house. I was supposed to look at that today.
Yeah, you went about 17 times.
But
it's like,
value in it. It's a house. It is a house.
But someone else will go, oh my God, it's so beautiful. But actually, is it just a really awkward shape? And is it that, can you add any value to it? No. So it's.
I think in my view at the moment, parking and gardens are the most important thing you can have. I think for the average Joe in the street, when you're buying a family home.
I still can't get why people buy a house without a garden.
When you're buying a family home, we all saw it during COVID and whatever else. The importance of having outside space, the importance of having parking, I think are fundamental. It fascinates me because we're in West Hampstead, right? And so many people, like this younger generation, want to be over there because where are you supposed to park your car? Like, I know people don't have cars.
But they don't have cars.
I think that's bullshit. I think loads of people.
Well, they call the line bikes and stuff.
I don't know. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
you've got to have a car. You've got to have a car
where
spot.
Where we live, you do. I mean, it's...
Where are you guys at in Essex?
So we're Essex.
But still.
It's like you get a bit more bang for your buck value-wise, but...
But again, I think that's a fallacy. I think that's a fallacy as well.
Yeah.
I think Essex has become double expensive now. It's become
so
Corntree, Louth and places like that.
Yeah.
I mean, who in their
not
right mind would
great
want to
either.
live in Chigwell or Louth? I hate those places.
Yeah.
That's for different reasons. But anyway.
We both live
We
in
spoke
that.
about
exactly.
that. Yeah.
But truth be told, when I would grow up, I was in Loughton a lot, right? It wasn't like an affluent place to be. But now, I know friends who live. I've got friends. It's an absolute fortune.
Yeah,
over
but it's
there.
getting more expensive.
For
And it's
what?
getting more.
That's,
Yeah,
but
everywhere is a fortune.
yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere
Yeah,
in London is a fortune.
There are. But then it's amazing because outside of London, when you go out and we look at this, like places like Liverpool or places like that, there's certain differences.
We were looking
Where
at something
we're sort of
yesterday.
saying-
It was literally yesterday. We're looking. I was like, how can you buy a whole house for 110,000? And it was in nice condition. I was like, how can you how do you build? You can't build in most areas now.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I was going to ask. Presume so you're nationwide.
Yeah.
Exclude London because I'm presuming that's where you find most of your
No,
properties.
wrong. Complete opposite.
completely
opposite. Okay, I'm an
The
idiot.
Easter map we do.
Okay, well then, all right. Well then, forget I said that. If there was a heat map, where would be the reddest spot?
Midlands, Northwest. Honestly, really, it's towns and cities where the average end value is between £200,000 and £400,000. So what would it cost? So that's like that encapsulates most people who are, dual income families of like £40,000 to £80,000, and can get borrowing to buy these properties.
And there's high turnover of properties, so the market's active.
Yeah.
Whereby we bought a building in Cornwall once, and you could look and go, "Oh, it's the most fantastic thing ever." Well, we bought this building had a mine underneath it. Do you know how to deal with a mine? Because I didn't know how to deal with a mine, right? And you look at it, you think it's cheap, but it's not. And you're comparing it. When you were saying about comparables, about what you compare, there aren't any comparables.
It's like 1800s built property that looked lovely, and we thought it was going to be a really good deal. It was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah,
And are you only London office? Have you got other offices dotted around the country?
No, because we do a lot. No, we're London. We're based in London.
Yeah.
Two of the girls are based in a place called Ashby de la Zeus because that's where they live.
Leicester, yeah.
But no, we go to we use Vuba a lot. We do
Really?
a lot with
We
Vuba.
can't really.
It's great.
We keep trying with it. But we
Vuba's
just never
unbelievable.
get
But it must be difficult for staff, yourselves, because it sounds like CRM is key.
Yeah, correct.
And it's staying on the. How are your staff getting up and down the country viewing these sites, but staying on top of them?
We use Vuba.
Really?
We use Vuba for a lot. Vuba's changed. I think it's changed the face of the market. Yeah. So I'm fascinated to see people, but people don't use.
But do you
Vuba.
trust the guy? Say they're going to see a site for you.
They'll have me on FaceTime.
So you can see the nooks and crannies.
I will be on FaceTime with that
I had
call.
one literally an hour before we got here. They're always nice people. They seem to be vetted. They seem to be proper people. It's just an additional income. I think she must have been late, like somewhere in her 30s, whatever, something like that. And she does 3 or 4 of these viewers a week. It gives her an extra 200 or 300 quid.
Yes.
And it's great. Like that's and it
And
fits around
you've
the
sent
schedule.
her to view the building so that you will decide to buy the building.
She
So we're
wants
looking
it.
at
Yeah.
it.
You're
We've got-
trusted
we've-
that much.
We've got an indicative price.
Okay.
But the reason I go there is because I don't know the situation. I go there and I expect the building to be completely fucked. Okay?
Yeah.
But there's completely fucked and there's buildings, like I said before, where there's trees going through them or there's huge structural problems.
Yeah.
Because that's a different that becomes a different animal then, and the pricing then becomes difficult. So what I just want to see is that the house exists pretty much. That I can walk into the house and the walls are there and the rooms are there. What's in the house is simply irrelevant to me. But I just want to see that, and that's why I say to people, I said I will get someone to look at it just see it exists, because you're telling me it's got 3 bedrooms, but I've never seen it. I've seen it from the outside. You might be full of shit, right? Yeah. Most time people are honest.
But that's it. Like I'm walking around this building and like she's just doing it. She's with the owner. It's like, that's it. And you
Yeah,
tell
but
her
it
you
must
wanna-
be so much she can't see
Not really,
or
but-
smell.
But
Can I be honest with you? I'll be honest with you. When you make mistakes, it are the ones that you haven't seen properly. And we've done that with a building in Kettering that we bought, and made a mistake. Yeah, made a mistake. Because on the face of it, you look at this building, you look at it, and you think it was a nice house, but I never got a feel for the air. It was a mistake because when I went up we ended up building this thing out, right? And the agent, I used local agent afterwards. I said, we've built out now. He goes, yeah, what you spent? He goes, I've been there. You spent 20 grand on it. It just cost me 100 grand. I was like, what do you mean? Because I'd never been to the building. I was relying on videos and whatever else, and the service was crap. The signal was crap. And I was like, I need to go and see this building. Went up there. The head height was atrocious, right? The road itself was crap. The parking side of it was crap. It was a mistake, and you learn from it, and it's our own fault. It's no one else's fault apart from our fault.
How
right?
could you buy a property without going to it once?
I do, but the lady who sold it did a video for me of the building, but I didn't get the full.
But you also have to remember, a lot of these buildings, they're all the same. Like they're all like the same. They're so similar. So like you can't go that far wrong when you're buying at a price that is effectively, you're buying it bricks and mortar price. You're literally buying it at between 40 and 60% of the modernised value. So we're not making mistakes. Like if we bought it, it's only wrong. It's normally because we got the end value wrong.
Yeah.
You have to really go wrong some to like get it that far. And we are seeing them all. We're doing video walkthroughs. We're seeing it.
And we are very careful of what we buy. We buy a lot, but we are very, very careful what we buy.
And speaking about the end value, I mean, clearly you know the sectors you're buying in.
Yeah.
Where are you getting these? Is it Rightmove comps, or is it you've got your own database?
We do a lot with Rightmove is a brilliant tool. I think I don't think you need estate agents in terms of giving you a comps. And I think one of the biggest problems.
I couldn't.
They just blow smoke up your ass most of the time.
We phone them up just to double check, and
They
probably 1 in 20 where
clueless.
you go, oh my god, they actually know the area.
Yeah.
The other 90, oh yeah, I don't know what they're not. I've only been
I
here
think
2 weeks. It's just like
my sister's had a house on the market for 3 months or 4 months, right? She's the agent said, why don't you do the viewing? She said, oh, okay, fine. So my sister, I'll do the viewing. She doesn't know she's a teacher, right? Loads of viewings, no offers. Gives it to a local agent who I know quite well. He said it for a week and got him an offer yesterday.
Really?
Yeah. So he said to me, he goes, you've got to know as an agent what you are doing. Otherwise, what are you paying? Like, what are you paying for? You have a skill set, as you said, Alex. Right? People trust you. You have a skill set, and I do think that we don't do much with agents. We don't buy from agents so much. I don't really have much of a relationship with them. But I do think the good ones are worth their weight in gold, and I think I do think they're few and far between. Because certainly when you go ring nationwide, some of these people are
it's terrifying.
some of these people are frighteningly stupid.
But you, as a property person, could sit there and you could put any property in front of me, and as long as I've got Rightmove, Zoopla house prices, and that's pretty much it. You could,
Me behind you.
Ben behind me, but you can pretty much within 5% get. You're not going to get it that far wrong. There are roads that have nuances that. You just don't know what school boundaries are where or whatever it might be. But
I can agree with you, but not in my sector.
No, we can tell you what something's worth to a
so much
valuer,
more unique.
but what
aren't they?
someone's willing to pay for it is a different
Well, I
proposition
try and
altogether.
understand what you guys do in terms of that model. That's why we don't get involved in that market, because I don't really know how to value it. I don't. To me, why a church wants to pay God knows how much money for a building
Good one.
is peculiar. It doesn't make sense to me. And also to me, to me, therefore, I feel I'm overpaying for the building. I like to buy the bricks and mortar of the building, not the whole value of the building. But yeah, it doesn't make. It's fascinating with people why they see value in it.
My friends, I tell them sometimes, or someone I've met, I tell them what I do. You do what? What people buy those sorts of things, and it's just the unknown. But clearly, there's a sector out there. We wouldn't have been doing this for the last.
But it is so unique
Yeah.
in terms of you can have exactly the same square footage in exactly the same area, but that building is worth £200 a foot or £400 a square foot.
Do you know once you've been there, or do you
Yeah,
just?
yeah, I've got to go. And again, going to a building, not going to a building and not walking around the area and feeling the parking and where the lampposts and the trees are and how easy it was. All of that's so critical. But the layout of the building, 8,000 square foot over 3 floors or 8,000 square foot on 1 floor, could double the value of the building.
What's more valuable over 1 floor, I presume?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think if I instructed you as the agent, I would want you to go.
Yeah.
I'd expect you. I'd be looking at for your.
And that's why we work with quite a lot of propcos, because they know what they're looking at from a bricks and mortar perspective, but they might not understand the values of a religious building.
Yeah, I mean, I say to my team, if I said to you, would you understand where the commercial market is? They probably wouldn't, because we're not in it.
We wouldn't have a clue what a house in Leicester's worth. I mean,
yeah, we wouldn't. And build
we
costs
can
as well.
all
I think
reach
that's
for Rightmove, but
there's a complete misunderstanding about build cost as well. I think people, and I say to my friends, but there's people I think got this idea about buying a building and doing it up and this.
yes.
No way. Next
Not in
house I
today's
buy-
market,
next
anyway.
house
I mean,
buy, I want a turnkey walk-in. It's done. That's it. Borrow as much from the banks as you possibly can. Let the banks have the risk. Keep the cash for another thing and invest in other stuff. Because I think people think, I'm going to do this to it and go and do that. It is a fortune. Absolutely. I don't know. Did you develop your own houses or have you?
I bought a brand new house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I put an extension on the back of mine. I actually regret it. Wasn't worth the money.
It's a bit double than what you thought, roughly, in the region of.
Yeah, not getting far off. Yeah.
It's expensive. Yeah,
It
we
is,
did
but
a loft conversion and we put a steel beam down. It's just the whole thing is.
but it's the hassle that goes with it as well. I mean, what
Correct.
should be a 6-8 week turnaround turns into 3-4 months, and
That's
it's
never
sort
6
of.
to 8
I did
weeks.
mine
Well,
with
no,
COVID.
do you know,
it took 6 months.
yeah, well,
it just
exactly.
everything
They should
costs.
invent services that take the time that they actually say they were going to.
Yeah, but they're builders. They're never.
Yeah, I was about to say that. They need
That's
to
the 21-year-old
They'll
there.
need to speak
Not in this
Romanian.
world.
Yeah.
I've got a build supposed to take 4 months in Bristol, and it's supposed to be finished this week, and we're close to a year in. But that's
You
one
need
of
to
the
get
things
Amish.
Yeah, but that's one thing as well about when you
don't
try
have
and do
many.
builds outside of where areas you can't control as well. Managing those builds are problematic as well. As I said, we could have builders, we could have everyone in house, but the running costs just become.
Is it
too
going to
much.
be really bad? I need to leave at 6 o'clock. Is that going to be like a cool?
So do I actually. But
Yeah, but you're not going to want to schlap to Bristol and back to go and see this site and
don't,
manage
no,
the build. No, but it's.
I don't. So you try and work with a builder who you trust, and we do have a builder who we do trust and we work with, because numerous times we've had builders go AWOL on us, and then we go back to our builder with our tails between our legs. And I think people ask me about builders, about who they should use. I think any builder that wants an extortionate amount of money up front is not a builder.
Cowboy.
Not that I want to get involved. It doesn't mean, but there are some very good ones as well. There are some cowboys. There's cowboys in any industry, but there are some very, very good ones. And actually, a lot of them don't even want, like my builder was like, the best projects they can do are these 20, 30 grand refurbs, because they know that's what it's going to cost them. When they start taking these big projects and they start going wrong and unraveling, it gets difficult.
the year is 2040. Are U-Spot property still going, still at the top, or have they sold their database for millions?
It's a good question. We can't sell the database
we talked about
because one of the things about the database itself is that unless you know how to make money out the data doesn't really have much value per se. Yeah, it's the skill set behind the data, the uniqueness of what we do is what makes us unique. The data, as I said to you, you can walk along a street and go and write to every single building. Doesn't mean you know how to buy them. What U-Spot have by 2040 and what we have now, we have a reoccurring list of buildings that we have spoken to, maybe spoken to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, where we would have bought that building. Yeah, where we would have bought that building, or whereby it's at that point where someone maybe want to sell that building. So 2040 will be flying high. Hopefully.
However morbid it sounds, is that a lot of these buildings, whenever you see a property that's listed on Rightmove or Zoopla, that is no chain, or look, there's a pea green suite in the bathroom. That's because someone's died. So a lot of these properties that we're aware of, you're effectively waiting for people to pass away for those to then become potentially long-term empty problematic properties. So a property that's shit on the outside, looks horrific, will most likely get worse and become something that we can buy at some point.
Yeah.
So
people
will.
People are never going to stop dying.
No, correct.
No.
But and so
Well,
like,
AI is very good.
I think where we saw quite a lot of sort of exponential growth over the last 3 or 4 years, because we opened up new areas, we're not going to see that same expansion ability unless we take on new areas. But
I did look at that. I did look at opening in Portugal, in Lisbon, actually.
Ooh.
I looked at that.
Just so you can go there.
It's not that.
Similar
It's not
property
that. It's
laws.
just that it's similar property prices, similar culture, actually.
And just
But
nice.
I don't know. Yeah, it's nice. That's
nicer
an
than being
amazing
in Bristol.
city. I don't know if do you ever do anything abroad? Like, we don't either. But again, of pushing out, so many people go and start the model in.
so I had a
States
fascinating
or,
conversation in Belgium. They've got very similar problems.
It's interesting, but it all comes down to data, the access to data. Every country has its own different provisions in terms of access to data, which enables us to do what we do. We've looked at launching, and someone contacted me about launching in the States, right? But you need people, and you've got to trust someone, and you need to have the access to the data, and you need to have, as you said, you need to have a feel for the market.
It is mad though, because there's so much, in most places, there's so much space as well, and the building materials, it's all timber built and.
That's the thing.
so-
One hurricane, that house is gone.
Yeah, could you imagine?
But they're not built to last in the same way in most of those areas. So, yeah.
Some of the stuff going on in the States is quite interesting. There's a lot. I didn't realise about the rental restriction. There's like a rental restriction market or something. It's a rental cap market over there in New York where they made it. There's rental caps now, so the rents are only. So people are selling a lot because the borrowing rates have gone up so much, but the rents are capped at X price. I would like to expand. It'd be nice to try and expand the model, but I need someone who sees it as we see it, and we can trust. And trust is a massive part of it, I think. Yeah.
That was fun. Thank you so much for coming on.
He looked like a great time.
Most involved I've seen, like,
sorry,
Well,
man.
do you know
Is
what?
it boring?
I
I'm
actually
sorry.
understood that.
yeah, no, it's good.
Did you understand probate?
Yeah, but this was a lot more clear and just just a really interesting business model.
It's busy. Yeah.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching, everyone. Don't know if we can top this, but we'll see.
Yeah,
Till next time, God bless.